Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my Draft podcast. I'm your host, Mel. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We are so glad to have you. On this podcast, we talk about navigating our faith, passions, professions, emphasis on the S. This is an imperfect, authentic, and safe space to get the strategy for your work and words for your soul. As a Rough Draft, we help you find the beauty in your current season while also helping you do the necessary work to get to your next season. And we are all about just redefining history with your everyday story, allowing God to use you exactly as you are and exactly where you are. So, welcome. If you've been a listener of this podcast, though, you're probably like, Mel. We're like, Mel, where have you been, child? Okay. And listen, I ain't gonna hold you. I've been living. Okay, I've been living my life. Another story for another day. But anywho, today we are talking about entrepreneurship and mental health. First off, y'all, we are on YouTube. Can we just give a shout out for that? Y'all can already see Victoria here, and I'm talking about that. But shout out to being on YouTube. Hey, y'all. Anyway, so today we are talking about entrepreneurship and mental health. And like I said, we have a special guest, Victoria Glover. She is not a stranger to this podcast. If you go back on Apple or Spotify, we did an episode where we talked about how to become a therapist, how to find a therapist, how to get into the mental health profession, talked about navigating our careers, celibacy, healing from toxic relationships. It's a really good one. I will link it so you can go back and listen to it. But again, Victoria is not a stranger. She is a licensed therapist. She has her own personal brand, The Victorious Counselor. She also has a podcast, which we'll talk about, where she intersects faith, mental health, being a Black woman, how to get into the mental health profession. She is also a very dear friend of mine. And so before we get into what we're talking about today, Victoria, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you specialize in, and your credentials so that the people know that you know what you're talking about? Okay?
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Mel, for having me back here again. I just want to start off by saying I am so excited to be here.
Too.
And yes, girl, to have this conversation with you. I know it's going to be a Holy Spirit led and blessed conversation.
Yes.
But yes, hi everyone. Hi, all of Mel's lovely listeners. I am Victoria Glover, and I'm an associate professional counselor in the state of Georgia. I am what Mel would call a 9-to-5preneur. So I do work a job at a mental health nonprofit in the Atlanta area. And I also am a part of a private practice in Atlanta, and we are called Worth Wisdom Wellness. Yes. Love the practice that I work at, and it's my specialty. So I love working with women of color. I just so happen to work with lots of women who identify as believers, women of faith, who have experienced emotional trauma. So they have experienced maybe not exactly getting needs met at a certain age when it was really critical and important for them. And a lot of the times that manifests in their relationships, that manifests in how they relate to other people. Hey, look, me too. So I just love the work that I do. I do consider myself to be a trauma-informed, trauma-focused clinician, and also just love to bring together faith in the therapy room. I think it's really, really important. And yes, y'all will hear more about me as this podcast goes on. So I'm going to stop right there for now. But I'm excited to be here and just, yes, all this. I'm a huge fan of Mel's, have been from day one.
I love you. Victoria has always been so supportive, and I just love her for that. So yes, thank you for the introduction. So the reason why I brought Victoria onto the podcast again was because, like I said, I've been living my life, y'all. Okay, and being an entrepreneur, being a corporate professional, being obviously a single Black woman, dealing with the pandemic, dealing with all the demands. I feel like we are in a time where obviously, being an entrepreneur, is the new trend. Everyone's starting their own business. And I know we're talking about entrepreneurship and mental health, but I really think this would be relevant for anyone really who is building anything, whether that be building a new career, building a new business or brand, starting something new. given the pandemic, everyone is kind of rethinking their lives, right? Rethinking, multiple streams of income, rethinking freedom and flexibility, and entrepreneurship a lot of times is the route that people take. And a lot of times we talk about, again, the flexibility of entrepreneurship, the beauty of being able to work for yourself, the beauty of making more money, but we often don't talk about the dark side of entrepreneurship, right? The longer hours, right? You're not working less. You're probably working more. We don't talk about navigating your career and your business and your relationships and your health and how to manage it all. We don't talk about the fear and the anxiety that comes when it's time to not just start, but also be consistent and maintain. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that I've had and experienced. We don't talk about the uncertainty and the disappointment and the unmet expectations that come when you don't start immediately making 10K months, when the invoices aren't paid on time, when your content doesn't go viral. And so all of the what ifs that come, a lot of times we link them to stress. We talk about burnout, taking time for yourself, self-care, right? But what I'm realizing through my own journey of prioritizing my mental health this year is that it's not just stress. Sometimes it can be unresolved trauma. And I'm realizing that, through my own journey of, going to therapy, I've been doing weekly therapy for about 6 months now, and it's been great. Thank you, Victoria.
I'm proud of you, man.
But prioritizing that, I'm just realizing, how much of my inconsistency, how much of my extreme anxiety, my severe anxiety that I would deal with, it was not just I was overworked. It was not just a poor work ethic. It was not just burnout. It was not just quitting easy. It was linked to unresolved trauma. Transparency moment. I was recently within that journey, diagnosed with PTSD. And it's like, here I am trying to run this business, trying to navigate my career, trying to navigate relationships, as you talked about, Victoria. And I'm walking around with all this unresolved trauma and wondering why I can't stick to things, wondering why I have such anxiety about the business, and where to the point where sometimes I didn't want to do anything with the business because I just wanted to have a peaceful day, because it was extremely triggering for me. And so I wanted to talk about that because I know that although that sounds crazy and although, it seems isolating, I know that I am not alone. Even when it comes to the podcast, to be honest, sometimes I realized it wasn't just, I don't have the listeners that I want. So, I'm going to quit. It wasn't just, this is a lot of work. It was, do I really believe that my voice is important? Do I really believe that people want to hear what I have to say? And it goes back to that fear and that imposter syndrome, but those are just symptoms, right, of sometimes deeper issues that needs to be dealt with. Maybe as a coach or a service provider, you really struggle with marketing and promoting your services. And again, it's not that you don't know how to get on Canva and make a graphic, right? Deep down, do you really believe that what you have to offer is good enough? Do you really believe that you are good enough? And if you don't, where did you learn that from? And so it's taken that extra step to not just be a girl boss, to not just be a CEO, but to understand and be like, you know what, I am struggling with this and I cannot push through and something's not working. And I'm going through this cycle. For me, it was going through the cycle of being in business, stopping the business, doing the podcast, stopping, and just really having to come to Jesus meeting with myself and saying something is not working. I cannot push through. So again, whether it is starting a new business, running your current business, starting a new brand, running your current brand, navigating new jobs, your insecurities, a new relationship, your insecurities will start speaking up, right?
Yes.
And so today, I want to give you the permission to understand that it's not your fault. It's not just a lack of motivation. There could be other things underneath the surface. And so I wanted to talk with you, Victoria, being a licensed therapist. I just be running my mouth, but she really knows what she's talking about. And I wanted to discuss how, starting something new, how doing something outside of what people would consider the norm, how that can bring up, insecurities, how that can show up as anxiety, how that can show up as unresolved trauma. So thinking through those triggers and those root causes, but then also what are some tools and resources, things that we can think about so that we can prioritize our mental health while we are, building and branding and, navigating our purpose. So let's get into that, Victoria. What are your initial thoughts before I even start asking questions?
Yeah. And you know what, Mel? I'm glad you asked because I want to start off by saying you are not just running your mouth. Okay. Your experience, I'm so glad and I'm just so thankful for your vulnerability and transparency, right? Because ultimately at the end of the day, everything that we do in life, right? Like we are not going to live a trigger-free life. Something is going to happen. It's just a part of being in a fallen world that gets us upset. And if we are not doing the work to uncover what exactly is going on here, like it's deeper than me just not liking this person, or it's deeper than, oh my God, this is a hard journey. I don't know if I'll be able to stick to this for the long haul. Understanding that there are some beliefs that are supporting and holding these thoughts that we have about ourselves, right? So first and foremost, I just want to say that's huge of you to have done so much work. And that's going to be the crux, right? For everyone listening, that's the crux of this conversation. Like a lot of this is going to be you doing that work. And yes, I'm definitely going to give some tips and feedback and some guidance in that. And there's no replacement for the actual process and the work happening. So I want to start there. But yes, Mel, thank you so much for sharing that with people.
Yeah, and it is work. Okay, let me just say that it is really work to really have to face yourself, to really have to dig up things that happened in childhood, to have to dig up all of that stuff and still see your family and still see friends and still, have to live life. Unfortunately, all of us can't pause and go halfway across the country and find ourselves. We still have to live and work. And so, yeah, it's like a whole nother job, doing that work. But yeah, so let's start here. Victoria, why do you feel like when it comes to starting something, whether again that be a business, a brand, a new job, why do you feel like even as 9-to-5preneurs, as we call ourselves, navigating both a job and a business, why do you feel like we struggle with prioritizing our mental health? And why do you think that sometimes people who are in this position may struggle more with imposter syndrome, anxiety, depression? Like, talk about kind of what those triggers may look like and how those triggers can manifest itself, whether that is like, for example, increased social media exposure, and it can be linked to comparison and all that stuff, or facing your fears, exposing yourself, the issue with needing people's approval, right? Essentially, you want likes, you want clients, things like that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
And I want to first say, why entrepreneurs might struggle in this area and neglect the mental health is number one, the lack of awareness, right? So I think a big piece of this conversation is attunement and people being attuned to themselves. So when I talk about attunement, I mean the way that we are talking to each other right now, right? And you're picking up my head nods and I'm able to read your body language.
Yeah.
Do we have that with ourselves? Because if we are attuned to ourselves, we can check in with ourselves and know when something's off. What gets us off course initially is that lack of attunement to self, right? Because if we are an entrepreneur and we're launching this business or launching this product, this platform, and we work longer hours and we have more responsibilities and we're not attuned to ourselves, we don't know when our body is saying, all right, girl, you need to sit down, or maybe you need to find a different way to execute this plan. Not saying don't do it, but find a different way to where you are not working yourself and overworking and overstressing, right? Because what our bodies do when we're stressed and tired is try to save ourselves and shut down and protect us because we want to survive, we want to live. And not knowing that and just being in this constant cycle of pushing and driving. You said it earlier, Mel, it's a cycle, right? We put something out there, we get tired, we stop, nothing comes out, right? And it's just this back and forth. It feels inconsistent, and a part of that is just not understanding our limits and understanding when is the time to pause and when is the time to keep going. So I think that's the first part of what we're talking about here, that attunement to self. Secondly, I'm thinking of imposter syndrome. I'm thinking of what we call, and my boss uses this term in private practice all the time, the scarcity mindset. Okay. So I see imposter syndrome and the scarcity mindset as like the evil twins. Like they love to come and bother entrepreneurs, especially because imposter syndrome is saying, you are not cut out for this. You know, you don't belong here. What makes you think that you have the credentials or the platform to speak on this? You know, this is not for you. And the scarcity mindset comes and says, well, someone's already doing that. You know, we already have a Black Christian mental health spokesperson. She's already Instagram famous. We don't have space for another one. And that's a lie. And you know why that's a lie, Mel? That's a lie because when you go to the store, when you go to the mall, you see stores that sell really nice clothes everywhere. You see stores that sell shoes everywhere. And just because you have two shoe stores in the same mall doesn't mean that they go out of business. In fact, they thrive off of each other, right? Because people like different things, you know? Yeah. So I think those two components right there, when you look at just how the scarcity mindset and imposter syndrome can really negatively impact us, if you combine that with a lack of attunement to self and not knowing when to take a break, it's no wonder that entrepreneurs are tired and stressed, right? Because we just have all these things working against us, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going back to that scarcity mindset, I realized that is a big thing. And I think I love how you brought it up as sometimes feeling like it's already been done. Mm-hmm. And I also think for me, it can also show up as, you know, if I, for example, want to move into full-time entrepreneurship, the fear of not having enough money, you know, the fear of not having the support that I feel that I need, like always feeling like I'm operating at a deficit. And so I operate from that deficit, like you said, because it's like, you know, not being attuned with yourself and just going and going and going. And you're constantly looking at what you don't have, right? Versus understanding the abundance of what you do have, you know? So I love that. And yes, I mean, people talk about imposter syndrome, but yeah, it can really show up. And I love that what you talked about, kind of not being attuned with yourself and just going and not sitting with yourself. So kind of piggybacking off of that, like, what are some of the things that entrepreneurs, again, whoever relates to this, what are some of the things that we should be on the lookout for before it gets to the point of burnout, before it gets to the point of quitting? Like, what are some things that we can do or signs we can look out for, whether that be, you know, on a daily basis or something that we should be doing daily, you know, before starting our day, before ending our day? Like, what are the things that we should be on the lookout for, and how can we kind of have that attunement, you know, on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I will, number one, definitely always say, listen to your body. So if you are chronically tired, you're getting like little colds here and there, or you're just getting sick more frequently, listen to that. You know, that's probably because your immune system is weaker because you haven't gotten the rest or like the proper nutrition that you need. So I'm always going to be the one to be like, hey, listen to your body, listen to how you're feeling. I'm kind of going on the side here, Mel. I apologize. No. If you want to, you can edit this out. This does not fit the conversation.
No, we are editing nothing.
But really, though, God gave us our bodies. You know, he gave us ways to check in with ourselves, right? There's a reason why we are able to feel emotions and able to feel things so deeply, right? That's not just by chance. That's very intentional. So check in with your body, listen to yourself. Number two, I'd say look at your calendar. So if you're an entrepreneur, I'm assuming you probably have a packed day, right? So in that packed day, do you have breaks? Do you have a time in the morning that you have your morning routine, right? So you're waking up, you're not just jumping to your phone, you're not jumping to emails to see who's subscribed, who's bought what. You are really just sitting and attuning to yourself. I like to start mine off with some scripture, some quiet time, whatever the case. I like tea, whatever you like. I would suggest bringing that element into there. And then do you have breaks throughout the day? Something I can also share between jobs. I used to, earlier this year, I was contemplating, do I need a break, you know, between my full-time job and then my clients in the evening? Should I just jump right in so I can get the day done faster? Mm-hmm. And the Holy Spirit was like, no. And I'm like, no, you know, I need that time. I have like an hour and a half in between jobs where I shut it down. You know, in my lunch break, I shut it down. I stopped putting out content during lunch intentionally because I need to not be working, right? There are times where I need to be resting. Mm-hmm. So we're checking in with our body, or signs to look for. You're not checking in with your body. You're getting sick. What do your breaks look like? What does your social life look like? And I don't Of course, right? We're busy. So we're not going to be at everybody's events. We're not going to be able to make everybody happy in that regards. But do you have time to at least breathe? You know, are you able to see your friends? Has it been months? Do they not know where you are? Are they sending SOS messages because they haven't seen you in so long? The people around us can also serve as mirrors, right? And they can also reflect back what they see from us. And sometimes we don't see it ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Girl, you reading me, honey.
Look, I'm reading myself too.
Listen, but that is so good. I think that one thing that has really been helping me, to your point, is starting my day with things that I want to do that prioritize myself before I'm giving my day to everybody else. And so for me, yes, it looks like scripture, but reading the Bible and praying. But sometimes, it's just like journaling. Like I love doing morning pages and just journaling all of my thoughts out before I bring all of that stress into my job or my business. Taking the time to fix a nice breakfast. For me, I don't really like working out that much. So I don't do that in the morning, but it's like, just having that time doing what you want to do and, making that, priority for yourself before you start giving it away to everybody else. That's something that's really been helping me. And then you also talked about taking breaks and having a social life. Because I think sometimes when you are juggling a job, when you are juggling multiple passions, so I like to write, I like business, I like, a bunch of different things, your mind can always be on, and I realize that there are times where I just have to sit outside without my phone and just sit. And that's hard. As an entrepreneur, it's hard because you're constantly thinking, you're constantly getting ideas, you're constantly, your brain is just constantly on, but you have to do the work to shut it down for a minute, so that you can just be. And to your point about being social, I think that's why this year, I just kind of shut it all down because I had no social life really, it was just all about business. The only thing that I had to talk about was what I was doing, and not just being. And I feel like that's really the main reason why I would get so burnt out, because I didn't have that balance. I didn't have that harmony of, living and doing, you know what I mean? So yeah, yes, that's good. So what are some of the tools that we can use? We know what the signs are to look for. You talked about, doing things in the morning, taking breaks. You talked about having a social life. Yeah.
I'm sorry. So no. I didn't answer the question fully and I wanted to circle back.
Go.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I want to come back to what you brought up in the very beginning of this question. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry if listeners, if you guys are like, oh, Lord, Victoria, all over the place.
We are editing nothing. This is the rough draft. Okay.
I love it. But let's talk a little bit about this putting yourself out there when you're an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. So Mel, you mentioned the social media exposure, facing your fears, you're putting yourself out there, right? And that, if we unpack that really is scary because we are now somewhat at the mercy of the likes and follows that we see on social media to a certain extent, right? Because a part of being in a business and being an entrepreneur is getting yourself out there. So there's really not a way around that part, right? We cannot not have a platform because then no one will know about our business. Yeah. And at the same time, so much stuff comes up when we are putting ourselves out there and when we are making content, when we make a podcast episode and people don't listen to it or like it the way we thought people would like it, Mm-hmm. And I think what you mentioned at the very beginning of our time today, Mel, the process that you went through, right? Or that you're going through. Mm-hmm. I want to speak to the importance of that because a little bit of information about me. So I am what is called an EMDR trained therapist. EMDR is an acronym for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So what does all this mean? Y'all probably wondering why she's talking about this. A lot of the work that I do is really looking at what the present triggers are in my clients' lives and uncovering the root, right? So this thing that's coming up right now probably has roots to earlier moments in your life, right? So this anxiety that you feel when you post content and don't get the response that you wanted and think, oh my gosh, it's over. This was a dumb idea. This was stupid. Why did I think, when your mind starts to go down this rabbit hole, that's linked to something deeper. Mel, I'm so appreciative of you sharing your story because I want to highlight that everyone's is going to be different, right? So everyone listening, I'm sure they could probably get bits and pieces of your story and think that, that's, it fits theirs, and it might. And a little information about the body and trauma. So when we have experiences, particularly like rejection type experiences at a young age, our nervous system stores that somehow in our body, right? Everyone's bodies are different. So this is why I'm really harping on everyone has to do their own work, because everyone's journey and everyone's path to healing and restoring that balance is going to look different. My suggestion to people who are listening, pay attention to what you're fixated on in the social media realm. If, it might be everything. It might just be, oh, well, the likes, or this person I wanted to collab with didn't get back to me. That really, really bothers me. I see them posting, they didn't get back to me. Think about what that really is doing, right? Think about the negative belief that you might be holding on to because this is happening, right? So it could be that this person is busy, right? They have a big following. They didn't see your message. They're going to get to your message. And we're over here really upset about it, right? But we are thinking and internalizing, wow, like I don't matter. Mm-hmm. I'm not likable, this and that. Those roots are tinting, right? They're tainting our judgment and causing us to just throw the whole business away when really, no, we need to sit and work on these roots, Yeah. So one key tip I want to give to all the entrepreneurs out there, yes, the road is hard, the journey is hard. Mm-hmm. And if we're fixated and needing the approval and validation of our audience, we're not going to get that far. We're going to burn out before we can, right? I truly believe healthy entrepreneurs and people that their businesses are sustainable in the long run are people who have done their work, or they're actively doing their work, right? They've dealt with these triggers, they've dealt with these insecurities, or are dealing with these insecurities. I'm sorry. I don't want to paint the picture that, we're healed one day and then, it's over. No, it's a continuous process, right? It's a continuous journey. And it's necessary, right? If we're not, we're spending all this energy upset and mad and being triggered over and over again. Yeah. And that takes away time from business. So that's my tidbit, Mel, about that part. Look for those signs in your work.
Yes, I'm so glad that you stopped me and said that, because that Victoria is the reason why I wanted to do this podcast, because when you see, business coaches or whomever it is, motivational people, they tell you, don't compare yourself. They tell you, get over, imposter syndrome and just do it anyway. But we don't take a minute to say, why am I dealing with imposter syndrome, right? We don't take a minute to say, why do I have fear? It's not just that I'm afraid. What am I really afraid of? And like you said, that takes work. What are the triggers? And again, it's not just inconsistency. It's not just that I struggle with posting content. It is that, when I post content or people don't respond a certain way, I can feel rejected. I can feel abandoned. I can feel like, again, with the podcast, my voice does not matter. And that stems from being silenced in different ways through childhood, right? But because I know that, it takes the shame out of it. So it's like, okay, I know that, what happened to me or whatever, I know where this comes from. And I know that it's not my fault. It was something that I was learned. It was something that was done to me. And so now that I know the root, when I am triggered, how can I reframe it? You know what I mean? Exactly. And so, yes, I'm glad that you brought that up, because you have to go underneath the surface. So like you said, really be healthy, and it's continuous work. The triggers aren't going to stop, Yeah. But how do you manage that? Right?
Yeah. How do we manage it? How do we do the work around that? And I think I know I used to get really tired of hearing do the work because it's so vague, and it's vague by intention. No one can tell you how to do your work, right? That's a journey that you and your therapist, hopefully, and God go on together, right? And it's hard work, and it's the best work. It's so rewarding, right? And I think it's underestimated and underrated in our society today, because we get on social media and everyone's launching their business, so everyone else is like, yes, let's just launch the business, and then these things come trip us up.
And that's really why I'm so big on the rough draft being a safe space. Because at the end of the day, I struggle with consistency, but ain't nobody gonna outwork me. I know that about myself. I know that I'm good at what I do, and I know that I'm gonna push through, and I know that I'm gonna, do the work. But at the end of the day, from like you said, am I doing it from a scarcity mindset, or am I doing it from an abundance mindset? Am I doing it from a hurt place, or am I doing it from a healed place? Because the work's gonna get done, but it'll be a lot easier if I'm operating from a healed space, and not constantly going through the cycle. Do I want to stumble my way through, or do I want to soar my way through? And of course, things are going to happen. Obstacles happen, things get in the way. And sometimes you do need to take a break, right? But I think prioritizing my mental health is helping me understand of how to navigate the bumps and the roads versus just letting them navigate me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Instead of letting them navigate me. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So good. Mm-hmm. That is so good. So, random question, not related, but related. So, how do you, as a therapist that works in two different spaces, as someone who is building your personal brand, you have a podcast, what does prioritizing your mental health look like for you?
She came with the heavy hitter questions, y'all. No, but to be transparent, I mean, I'm in weekly therapy, right? So I have a therapist. I have a life outside of being a therapist, and I'm still navigating, working through my stuff, and I'm not ashamed of that at all. So I prioritize my mental health that way. I have recently started telling people no. I can't do everything. And that was a part of my stuff. I wanted to be there for everybody, and I wanted to people please and make everybody happy, even if it was at the expense of myself, So I recognize those habits and take weekends to do nothing, like I really have to carve out time for myself and be intentional about carving it out, not just, randomly. I've recently started taking days off when I didn't necessarily have anything planned. So I encourage mental health days. If you have the ability to take them, I recognize that's a pretty privileged statement. So if you have the ability to take a mental health day, do it. We don't have to wait till we're burnt out or upset or having a breakdown and take a day off. You can do it before that time comes. Yeah. And I think for me, like attuning to myself and listening to my body has become a mantra of mine, being very intentional about not pushing myself too hard. And I have times where I let my emotions out, I don't like to keep them bottled in. That makes everything worse, right? So I journal, I pray, I cry when I need to. I will say that I have a phenomenal support system. So I have good people around me, and when I need to talk or cry or pray, like I have people around me to help me through that, And I think that's important too, Mel, that community aspect.
So what do you do though when you don't have that strong support system? When your family may not support your business, when you may not have your friends that are, and keeping you encouraged, how does that change as a therapist?
I haven't experienced my support system not supporting me. So that question threw me for a loop a little bit.
or what would you tell a client that deals with that? Because that's the real thing too, of having people that don't feeling like they're not supported in their business.
Yeah. I would start with asking them to think about the why behind their business. What is driving them to do this certain thing? Remember their why. That might be the only thing you have some days. When you said support your business, Mel, it kind of brought me to this place, and let me know if this is the direction you wanted to go in. Like, are you looking for your friends and family to support your business and that's it? Are you not putting out ads in other places to get other people to know about what you're doing? Or are you solely depending on word of mouth and friends and family? Because I have seen and heard from other business owners that that is not the way to go for various reasons, because yeah, we can't depend on just friends and families to buy our stuff and listen to our podcast. We have to try to reach other populations. So I would encourage that thought process or thinking about what it would look like if I didn't make my friends and family the target audience.
Mm-hmm. And then also that, yes. And then also, to that point, also considering that, like, sometimes you may have to create your own community. Sometimes that looks like joining a entrepreneur group. I don't know, and creating that, community for yourself. And also, like you said, remembering your why, because if you don't have your why, if you don't have that peace within yourself, then nothing that anyone else can do will not be enough, because you don't have that within yourself. And I think I've had to learn that personally. So yeah. But sorry, I cut you off. You were talking about, prioritizing your mental health as a therapist. And you were talking about how, having stronger community, how having strong community was a big thing for you. Was there anything else?
Man, I don't think so. I mean, my faith, I think I mentioned that already. So that I don't think I have to say it again. But briefly, Mel, to your question about what if your family and friends don't support you, I would also be curious about what it means to you that they don't support you. So and of course, that's a hard thing, right? We all want our family and friends to like what we do and support us. And is what we're doing dependent on the validation and approval of mom and dad or friends or aunts and uncles, and what about that validation and approval is so important and could possibly be holding us back? Something else to explore, something else to do the work around, but that came up in my mind as you brought that question up.
Yes, because again, it's not just them not supporting your business, right? It's again, that's a symptom. That's one event. But again, there are other things that have happened. There are other root causes and things that have happened probably in childhood that make you even trigger to, again, like you say, need their validation and not want to be consistent because you don't have that validation. So yes, this is good, girl. I'm so glad you took that segue, because it did remind me of all the stuff I wanted to talk about.
Yes, this is a good conversation. For sure.
Okay, so we talked about the signs. We talked about understanding your triggers, understanding that sometimes it's rooted in a deeper issue. We talked about that you have to do your work. We talked about, at the end of the day, the work will get done, but from what space are you doing that work? Other than, going to therapy and, understanding your triggers, are there any other like tools that people can use maybe if they are, experiencing anxiety, whether it's the grounding mechanisms that, things that I've learned in therapy? What are some things that people can do in the moment when they are feeling that anxiety, when they are feeling that depression, when they are feeling that imposter syndrome? We talked about taking breaks throughout the day. We talked about, prioritizing your mornings. But in the moment, when you're experiencing that, anxiety attack, what are some things that they can do in the moment?
I'm a huge fan. Excuse me. I'm a huge fan of deep breathing, making sure you're breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. I tell my clients, try to get in 5 to 10. See how you feel. Like check in with yourself with an actual feeling word and keep doing it until you feel a little better. In the moment, things to do. If you feel like your anxiety feels overwhelming, like gripping, go get something to drink, something really, really cold or really, really hot, because that's going to get your nervous system in a different state. And you're going to shift your mood a little bit when you do that. Let's see. I love the 5 senses. Mel, are you aware of that one? Yeah. So naming 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste.
Say that again. Say that again so people can write it down.
Yes. So 5 things you can see. And this is for when you're experiencing I would say pretty heightened anxiety. You can use it when you're having a spiral or like depressive thoughts too, but it really works well for anxiety. 5 things you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, 1 thing that you can taste. And some clients like to repeat that. That's an excellent grounding technique. I know, and I personally am not really a fan of fidgets, things to have at your desk, but I know other people who are. So that could be something to think about. If you're someone who has to move your hands a lot when you're anxious or like during a conversation with
stress
a
ball.
coworker. Yes, a stress ball, a fidget toy. You can get them on Amazon. They're really cheap. Those are helpful too. I personally, and this is shifting more towards like the negative spirals, the depressive thoughts, those states. I love coming up with your own personal affirmations, or your own personal like list of positive thoughts that can help get you out of that space, right? So I can give an example here. Like if you are really down and upset that you just launched this product and it's not getting the traction you thought it would get, and you might have thoughts like, this sucks, no one likes this, I'm a failure. Okay, those are negative thoughts that you might be experiencing in the moment. What are some reframes that we can do for that, right? So I gave my effort the best way I knew how. This is not the last thing that I'm going to do. There's more coming from me. I have whatever positive attribution you want to insert there. So I have the drive, Mel, I have the work ethic to see through this project and to relaunch, if this is something that I really believe in. So sometimes we let those negative thoughts take us to a space and then we stay there, fighting back with some positive affirmations and reaffirming ourselves, I find to be very effective. And other clients I've worked with have also found to be pretty effective too.
That's good. I hope y'all are taking notes or rewind it and go back and take notes, because those are very helpful to kind of I really like the 5 senses, because it takes my mind off of whatever it is that I'm anxious about. And I have to physically look and find, 5 things that I see and things like that. So I really, really like that, as well as the positive affirmations too.
Yes.
So
now, can I put you on the spot?
Yes. Oh,
okay. We're on video, so this is the perfect time.
How are you going to ask me a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Something else I do with my clients that I think other people would benefit from is called rhythmic tapping. So tapping, the bilateral stimulation is something.
Yes, I've done that.
You have? Okay, perfect, beautiful. So we're just going to practice it and show your listeners and followers what it looks like. Okay. But I typically ask my clients to hook their hands like this. So this is the butterfly cross. And you're going to lay them on your chest. And you want the tops of like your tippy fingers to be touching your collarbone. And I asked them to start tapping at a moderate pace. And I start off so they can see my pace, but you can pretty much pick your own. And I ask them to think of an affirmation. Well, typically, I ask them to think of a positive feeling. So this might come from a check-in that we're doing or a checkout that we're doing. So Mel, I want to ask you, putting you on the spot here, how do you feel about putting this podcast out, putting this YouTube video out this morning?
You said do it. You said think positive.
Well, just give me a feeling word.
Excited.
Excited. Okay. Can you give me another one?
And anxious, but not in a bad way, just like anticipating, how it will help other people.
Okay. How do you feel about yourself for putting this out there?
I don't really feel anything about myself.
No. Let's see. Excited is good. Happy is good. I would try to shift and point my client in the direction of maybe like saying like I'm empowered or I am capable, something like that. So looking for like a very positive core belief. And I would ask them to repeat that. So just like that, Mel, is your tapping.
I am empowered. I am capable. I am obedient. And
Beautiful.
I am capable.
Mm-hmm. Repeat that one more time.
I am capable. Don't you have me crying on this podcast?
I'm capable. Can you repeat the string of ones you said? Because that was really good.
I am empowered.
Mm-hmm.
I am obedient.
Mm-hmm.
I am capable. I don't remember the other one.
Yes. No, that was it.
Yeah.
Yes, Mel. And I would have clients repeat that. And I've had clients do that outside of session, right? So a couple of my EMDR clients, we get to the negative belief, they realize that something they've been struggling with is feeling alone and feeling rejected. So when they're having those moments where that's triggered, they go into their butterfly tapping and they tap, I am not alone. I am not abandoned. The Holy Spirit is with me, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Girl, I had clients come back and be like, oh, that was so good, Victoria. Like, I felt so great afterwards. And I'm just like, yes, it's working. The science behind it is working. The Holy Spirit's working. So if you're listening to this, try out some tapping. It probably would be good for your nervous system.
I love that. That was a really good exercise. I'm glad you did that though. If you're listening on like Apple or Spotify, you'll have to come over on YouTube and see us do that. But I love that. My therapist does the rhythm tapping when we go through the EMDR stuff too. And it's really helpful. So this was good, man. We talked about triggers. We talked about tools that we can use, how we can structure our day. I just cannot thank you enough, Victoria. This is just the idea that I had times 10. And so I just cannot thank you enough just for sharing your journey, sharing your tips, giving us a little mini therapy session right there. And so, like I said before, Victoria, this is literally just scratching the surface. Victoria has an amazing podcast where she talks and also brings on other people. And she's just a wonderful resource about how, really anyone, but especially, Black Christian women, how they can prioritize their mental health. Again, if you want to learn how to get into the mental health profession, because I know a lot of people, are thinking about that. And so, tell us about your platform. Tell us about your podcast. Tell us how we can find you. We are, of course, going to link all of your stuff, in the show notes or in the whatever below. We're going to link it. But tell us a little bit about your podcast and kind of, how you got started and what it talks about. And then kind of tell us, how we can get in touch with you as far as setting up a session or things like that.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at The Victorious Counselor. I do have a podcast called The Victorious Counselor Podcast, and it is streaming pretty much on all major platforms. So you can find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, wherever you look for your podcasts, you'll be able to find me. And my platform, so I definitely, of course, have shared with you all that I love working with Christian women of color. I'm passionate about empowering women of color. I'm passionate about understanding how neuroscience and the Bible align. So I'm a total where science meets and intersects with scripture nerd. I love that so much. I think it's important to be aware of your triggers. It's important to be aware of the impacts of trauma. And I get into this in my podcast, but I'll share a snippet of it with the listeners today. Just understanding that trauma is from Satan, right? It's from the enemy. Mm-hmm. And what we experience, the impact of that, the negative thoughts, just the diagnoses that we could get, all of that hinders us, right? It's created to be a stumbling block in our purpose and our walk with God. So understanding how to dismantle that and push through that and work through that is only going to improve your walk with God and improve your ability to walk in your purpose and accomplish your mission. What you're here, what's your purpose, what you're here on the earth for. I'm very passionate about bringing awareness to that and assisting my listeners, my clients, and showing up as the best version of themselves. Mm-hmm. I hope that wasn't too long-winded. Oh. Check me out, please. Yes. The Victorious Counselor Podcast. I am so incredibly blessed to be able to have that platform. And, Mel was a part of that podcast coming to fruition. I don't know if she realizes that or not, but it was after being on her podcast where I started to really be like, yeah, like this is where I started to realize this was something that I actually loved to do and wanted to do on my own. So thank you, Mel, for your obedience and planting seeds.
And your practice is called Worth Wisdom Wellness.
Yes, we are Worth Wisdom Wellness in Atlanta. If you'd like to book with me, you can find me on the website, schedule an initial consultation. We can talk for 15 minutes, or you can jump right into an intake session. Just call us up. I think Mel will be able to put all the information in the notes and everything. So.
And do you do in person and like telehealth? Do people have to be in Atlanta, or do you do both?
Yes. Right now I'm strictly telehealth.
Okay.
We don't have an office location as of right now. So yes, you can meet with me via telehealth.
Okay, so you don't have to be in Atlanta, y'all. Hit Victoria up, honey. Okay, but this was great. Again, thank you so much, Victoria. I will link all of her stuff in the whatever below so that you can find her. This is the rough draft, y'all. But anyway, we're gonna go. We have gone way over, but this was so good, and I just cannot wait. If this helped you, can you find me on Instagram? I'll link it below. Email me, email Victoria. Let us know that this impacted you, because again, this was a thought that came to mind that honestly I really wanted to do earlier in the year, and like I said, I just was not in that space to do it. And then I really felt this push, like you got to do it now, you got to do it now, you got to do it now. So I literally hit up Victoria, and the next week here we are. So I definitely think that this message is timely. And so if it helped you in any way, let us know so that we know we weren't crazy. But yes, thank y'all for listening. I will be back with new episodes. I'll be back and talking about, all the different things I've been learning on my little break. So be sure to subscribe either on YouTube, where you listen to podcasts on major platforms. And we will see y'all next time. Say bye, Victoria.
Bye. It was so great to be here, Mel. Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. Bye, y'all.